Hey YouTube, so I wanted to do a video on this issue surrounding philosophy, technocrats, and professionalism. And I'm calling this one, How the Incompetence of Technocrats Contributes to the Fall of Western Civilization. And I wanted to begin with sharing an excerpt from this book by John Ralston Saul's Voltaire's Bastards, which is kind of his own interpretation and his take on Voltaire's original book. And although I found it really interesting, it's from an era before ours, so a couple 10, 20 years out of date, but it has a really relevant point to talk about, and I thought it was important to add this to public discourse. So, the control of emotions and the prevention of panic is always presented by technocrats as a high sign of their professionalism. To this day, one of the first ploys used by professionals when caught in debate with non-professionals is to suggest that amateurs have panicked and that it is ignorance which leads to panic. But a re-examination of the argument of professional cool over amateur panic, which was first used to great effect during World War I, leads one to question its value. Wouldn't it have been better for staffs of the various armies to have panicked instead of duly carrying out their mutual and pointless murder of men under their command? Is not the inability to panic a sign of stupidity or of some serious character flaw? The ability not to panic has been turned into one of the great virtues of the last 100 years. Not only military, but all sectors of leadership are judged on this ability. Everywhere we hear businessmen, bankers, bureaucrats, politicians, and generals calming us with expert tones, indicating that we may relax and follow their expert lead. The rational method has become the cool approach of the insider. What is this air of superiority based on? Where are the examples to prove that cool knowledge advances the cause of civilization? In reality, the ability to panic has always been one of the greatest strengths of those in positions of command. To panic doesn't necessarily mean to turn and run. Intelligence and a sign of dignity usually allows the maintenance of external composure. Self-doubt combined with dignity is essential to competent leadership. A man or an organization, even a society, capable of profound internal panic is able to recognize when he or it is on the wrong track and perhaps to identify the error by giving in to the need for a competent, complete reevaluation. Out of that reevaluation may come the right track. The man of reason, as we currently understand him, is incapable of this panic. He carries about within himself such an expertise and structure that he has absolute assurance. Thanks to his intellectual tools, he can always prove, even when surrounded by self-generated disaster, that he is right. If on the field of battle, military or civil, things do not work out, then the circumstances are at fault. The commander of reason is equipped with sufficient self-confidence to persist no matter how wrong he is. Sooner or later he can prove it. Reality will see the light. The ability to respond to circumstances, Sun Tzu's key to strategy, is only possible, of course, if the leader is able to scramble his preconceptions. The internal strength required to let oneself panic lies at the heart of that ability. Not only has 20th century military training ignored that strength, it has concentrated actively on stamping out any signs of such individual intelligence in the professional officer. So I think that this was a really important passage for multiple reasons, because I think that it really illustrates something that they didn't realize, because I don't think terrorism was, in terms of local terrorism, I don't think it was really a big deal. And in terms of even the business class as well, this isn't just about terrorism and our lackluster response to terrorism in the Western world, and our lacking in courage and bravery, etc., in our convictions. And basically, it seems to me like the technocrats system that I've described involves calming everyone to assure them that their form of leadership requires everyone to be calm and everyone to listen to them and not to panic. But I've described panic very differently as a mechanism of self-defense for cultures. So, for example, a culture that is capable of recognizing when they're embarking on an incorrect path or a damaging path would be able to have freedom of speech and be able to have this internal debate and be able to determine what is the right course of action. But a country or a nation or a group of people that does not have freedom of speech would not be able to make that same determination. Society uses a combination of free speech and moral panic to determine if there's a credible threat, and we use this defensive alarm system to categorize the various levels of threats. technocrats seem to view any kind of panic or even any kind of emergency situations and panic in those emergency situations as being registered to as not being professional and not registering to the public as they're being in control. But at what point do they have to admit that they're not always in control, and that to reassure us in a situation where they're not in control is just misinformation? And I think that's what we're dealing with a lot of the time now, is that they're so sure that panic is bad and that listening to authority is good, that they're not even concerned about whether that authority actually has the right expertise or the right experience to actually deal with the situation. And they attempt to suppress anyone who tries to raise any kind of issues with how things are run for the sake of what they hypothetically see or determine to be the greater good. And I don't know exactly what they're determining to be the greater good at this point, because I think panic, in the way that I've described it, could actually be a very useful tool for society. So what do you think? Do you think that philosophically speaking, that panic has always, it does seem to have a negative connotation associated with it, and probably the etymology of the word itself may even have some inherent negative and or weak linguistic aspects to it. But I think that the element that I'm discussing is more like raising the alarm. That's what panic is doing in this situation. It's the town crier. It's not necessarily someone who is really upset and not dealing with their situation and just panicking, running around in circles. It's also the person raising the alarm. It's the person saying that there's something has gone wrong. And you know what? If we ignore those people forever, we will miss things, and we'll miss huge problems that we could have solved otherwise. So I want to know what people think. Does societal panic always come with negative consequences, and as the professionalism of the Western technocrats would suggest, or is this actually a case of us sinking into some kind of deferral to authority where we actually don't have to deal with any of our problems and don't actually have to take responsibility for our own safety and for our own political leaders who we choose to put in power, because we're just so sure that all the authorities will deal with it and we'll never have to take responsibility for anything. So I'd like to know what you think about this. Thanks very much. Have a good day.